Good everybody, welcome to the IJB meeting today. Before we start, I'll read out this notice. Welcome to this meeting of the Inverclyde Integration Joint Board. This meeting has been held remotely and been filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcasts available through the Council website. The Integration Joint Board is a joint data controller with Inverclyde Council and NHS Data Glasgow Clyde under the General Data Protection Regulations and Data Protection Act 2018. This meeting was broadcast and recorded to fulfil our public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during this remote meeting will be retained in accordance with the Council's published policies available through the Council website. Members of the Integration Joint Board are reminded that they should follow the IGB's established meeting protocol, including around the use of the chat facility, and the comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have received invites through this meeting. Thank you. Can I just some other bits of pieces? I would like to introduce the latest councillor of the council, Ian Heller, and Ian is along here today to observe how the meetings work. He's a new guy, but he served the police for 30 years, so he can still do a sit to the rest. Anybody get very cheap, soon you get the victory. Also, can I also take an opportunity to welcome Stephen, and he's the director of the customer service RCH, who have just been made a award there with HSP. We're delighted to recognise our partnership working with Inverclyde HSP to combat homelessness in our community. So well done to you. Thank you. Pass on regard to everyone at RCH and stay with the person in the office. And also, I just passed out there. There's another member of our committee today, and she's going to be sitting on the committee as my colleague Francesca Brennan. Francesca has got quite a load of experience in the council now, and she was busting to come on this, so we had to grant her a wish. Also, I'm proposing item 17 is the annual accounts. It's down to 17. I'm proposing we move that to the first item on the agenda. Okay, Craig.
Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry. Follow declaration of interest.
And Charlene Bailey, Vicky Foley substituting, and Margaret T. with Jonathan Creed substituting. Chairwoman Rita Woodfall, we're asking for declarations of interest. The following members please indicate if they're present at the meeting or in the person remotely. Councillor Moran.
Present the chair.
David Gould.
He will be here.
Councillor Brennan.
Present in the chamber.
Councillor Quinn.
Present remotely.
Councillor Reynolds.
Present remotely.
Dr. Metcalf.
Present in the chamber.
Aaron Turner.
Here. Remotely.
Dr. Ryan.
Present the chamber.
Kate Roberts.
Present in the chamber.
Jonathan Hines.
Present in the chamber.
Craig Gibbon.
Present in the chamber.
Dr. MacDonald.
Present online.
Laura Moore.
Present in the chamber.
Dr. Jones. Gemma Airpley.
Present in the chamber.
Diana Crone.
Present in the chamber.
Vicky Cloney.
Present remotely.
Donald McQuaid.
Present in the chamber.
Taylor Davis.
Present in the chamber.
Stephen McLaughlin.
Present in the chamber.
Are there any declarations of interest?
Okay. Craig.
Thank you very much. Through yourself, this is our annual accounts and annual audit report for the financial year ended the 31st of March 2024. There's a number of recommendations there, but before we get to the recommendations, I was going to bring in two more who's online at the moment from KPMG, which will be talking through this part of it.
Excellent.
Timur, you okay to come in?
Yes. Uh, Thank you so much. And good afternoon, everyone. So this is to present the annual audit report to the members of the Inverclyde Integration Joint Board and the Controller of Audit for the year ended 31st March 2024, which I believe is included on pages 59 to 85 of the agenda item 17. Before I go into the report, I would like to thank and recognize the effort extended by Mr. Given and the finance team throughout the audit. I will not go through in detail through the report in detail. However, I would like to point out a couple of important points included within the report. So the first one being the audit conclusion expressed on page 5, which notes that our work on the financial statements of the IGB is substantially complete. We plan to issue an unqualified audit opinion on the annual accounts of the IGB for the year ended 31st March 2024, following the approval of the accounts and provision of the representation letter, which is laid down on pages 8 to 11 of the pack. I would like to point out the representations included within the representation letter are usual in nature, and there are no extraordinary representations that we are requesting as part of that representation letter. Next, I would like to draw your attention to the materiality on page 6. We use the materiality of 5 million for the audit of the IGB's financial statements, which equates to approximately 2.14% of the gross expenditure, which has been used as a benchmark for the determination of the materiality. As part of our audit, we design our procedures to detect errors in specific accounts at a lower level of precision than our materiality, which is referred to as the performance materiality, and which in this case amounts to £3.75 million. We further use misstatement reporting threshold of £250,000, which means that any audit difference identified which exceeds this value is reported as part of our report. The significant risk of material misstatements in relation to the financial statement audit, as well as the wider scope, are included on pages 7 to 17 of our report. I would like to point out that there has been no change in determination of the risk as compared to the planning, which were communicated as part of our audit strategy document. I would next like to draw the attention of the members to the confirmation of independence on page 20 of our report, wherein we confirm that as of the date of the report, in our professional judgment, KPMG is independent within the meaning of regulatory and professional requirements, and the objectivity of the partner as well as the supporting audit staff is not impaired. I would next like to draw attention to page 22, which lays down a summary of differences that were identified as part of our audit. As mentioned on that page, all the differences identified were presentational in nature and have been agreed and updated by the management. Next, we provide a follow-up of the prior recommendations, which are included on page 23 to 26 of the report. We note that there were 6 prior recommendations, out of which 3 have been implemented and 3 are ongoing as at the date of the report. I will stop there and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay.
I've got a couple of questions on it. If anybody else has anything in the report?
Right, David
Thank you, Chair. No, just to say, as Chair of the Audit Committee,
and Paul.
we went through the annual accounts at our Audit Committee meeting this afternoon, and 3 recommendations is there in terms of recommending the IGB to authorise the Chair, Chief Officer and Chief Financial Report Officer to accept and sign the accounts, to consider the representation and recommend that it's signed by the Chief Financial Officer. We also noted the content annual report. So as an audit committee, we are content for this to come to this meeting and for it to be signed off by the Chief Financial Officer. Just to give it that assurance, it's going through due governance process.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Chair.
Can I just ask one thing in your executive summary? it was about the significant risk was fraud risk from manageable, right? You go on page 78 how you mitigated that. I wonder if you explain a bit more about that, the background to that at all.
This might be something that Tima might want to come in himself on this here, but certainly in terms of it, it is the auditors every year, they identify what they say the main risks are going to be for each organisation for themselves. That's the case, and that's a pretty much standard one across the board. We have a process, we have processes in place that, in terms of our governance, in terms of how we work as an SMT, this board is an example as well, that I feel is strong enough and robust enough that allows us to mitigate all these potential risks that might come about. Happy if Tim wants to add any more to that, but certainly that's from my side of it.
Yes, just to add to what Mr. Gibbons said, the management override of control is a standard fraud risk, which is not revertible as part of the requirements of the standards, auditing standards. So it's a risk that is considered as part of each and every audit that we do. That primarily consists of looking through the accounting transactions that have been processed during the year and identifying if there is any high risk criteria that applies to them. It will be worth noting that the majority of the transactions are actually rooted in the IGB through the constituent bodies. And based on the work that we have done on the main council, as well as our risk assessment procedures that we have done as part of the IGB, nothing no reportable instance has been identified as part of that.
Accountable. Todd here, no, great. And blanks. If there's no other, nobody else got any questions, the green report then? Next item on the agenda is minutes of the Inverclyde Integration Joint Board, 9th of September. Page 27, 20, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, anybody get any in the minutes?
Can I just pick up a couple of matters arising from the minutes? I don't know if I thought this is the right time to do it, but I think there were some concerns around routine calendar and reporting around routine calendar. So we've taken a lead that's an action and just advise you the pictures there. So for health, it was through the clinical and care governance processes. And for the council, because there's two separate processes, it was through the chief social work officer. So just to provide that level of point of completion.
Thanks, okay. Everybody okay in a minute? No. Item 3 is the Integration Joint Board membership update. Vicky.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to ask the IGB to note the appointment by the Council of Councillor Francesca Brennan as a voting member of the IGB to replace Martin Yokoski. The report also asks the IGB to confirm the reappointment of members for a further term of up to 2 years. Most of the IGB members have reached the end of their current term, and there is a requirement to reappoint those members in line with the process set out in terms of the 2014 order and the IGB standing orders. I also have an additional recommendation, Chair, in respect to membership matters, which is for the IGB to note that Veronica Rasmussen is now the proxy member for the Council Staff Representative Member, Gemma Airplay, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, welcome aboard. Hope you enjoy your time on the IGB. Next item on the agenda is a financial board report. Craig.
Thank you for your Chair. This is our period 5 monitoring report And it's a standard finance paper that we bring forward to every IGB. And it covers a number of main areas. These are currently our projected 24-25 position, current capital position, and our reserves position. Paper also gives the updated progress against the savings target to date, and a note there is another paper later on today which covers this in a lot more detail. As at period 5, our current projection overspend of £538,000 within the overall IGB. Social care budget is projected to overspend by £246,000, and the health budget is projected to overspend by £293,000. Obviously, by year end, if we still have these overspends in place, we will use reserves to bring this position back to break even. Going into a wee bit more of the detail, which is there. Children and families are projecting a £3.9 million overspend, mainly due to residential placements and child respite placements in period 5. At present, we're using the non-recurrent pension monies to help smooth this overspend in the next few years while the review takes place in this area. This is partially offset by underspends in older persons, assessment and care management, and mental health. Secondly, looking at the health budget, mental health inpatients is projected to be overspent by £682,000 and prescribing by over £1 million. This is mainly offset by vacancies across all our main areas. Savings groups are underway, which are specifically looking at the prescribing costs, as an example. The next section highlights the HSCP's progress, again to date, in achievement of the in-year savings. And as you can see, as I've mentioned there, we've made good progress in this, and there is a separate report later on today that gives a lot more detail on that. Section 7 shows our overall earmarked reserves position, and this shows we started the year with 19.287 million and expect to finish by 12.775 million based on our current projections. Moving on to the capital section, section 9 shows the current capital position. At this point, we're not showing significant spend, but this is likely to be incurred next year, especially with our bigger projects like the Community Hub capital project and this upgrade. As is always the case, happy to take any questions any member might have.
Thank you, Craig. Can I just say to members who are on the web, could you please mute yourself until you speak? We're going to be a feedback. Someone is not muted. So you just double check. And if you want to speak, you'll put your hand up for the chat function. Thank you, Craig. Do we have any questions for Craig on financial performance report? No. Thank you, Craig. Item 5 is a role in action. Okay.
I think we've tidied up the role and action log, so we're all actually up to date with the role and actions, and they reflect the business of the IGP moving forward. So I've not really got anything else to add on that.
Does anybody have any question or update role in action? No, thank you. Next item on the agenda is a mental health grant funding update. Craig.
Thank you very much. Through yourself, Chair. This is a paper which is going through all IGBs this cycle, and it's highlighting that the Scottish Government have bundled a number of our grants into a single funding stream. While doing this, they've reduced their overall allocation, and as per the paper, it's an overall reduction of 5.48% in funding. For Inverclyde, this is a reduction of just under £52,000. We're still currently assessing the potential impacts of this for Inverclyde directly, and we'll come back with a further paper in January when we have a full slate on this. But we feel at this moment in time, similar to all the other IGBs, we have to identify and make the IGB aware of this, and the potential impacts of that will come back next cycle. I'm happy to take any questions.
Oh, I think it's simple, right? Oh.
Can I just clarify, this is in your funding for this financial year, is that correct? And it's been notified 9 months into the financial year.
It is indeed, yes.
How much a problem is that? 8 months.
If it's okay, I'm going to pass over to Katrina with this one.
Thank you, through yourself, Chair. In relation to our planning, it has had probably less of an impact for us as a service as perhaps other areas. We did have spend allocated against our mental health framework and action therapy monies, but due to some recruitment issues, we haven't been able to recruit to those posts and they've gone back out to recruitment. So that lag has allowed us to have a minimal impact on our actual service delivery in terms of what the potential reduction will be. And we are also at this point looking to next year to look at what that impact might be and how we can mitigate that impact in the next financial year if that's to continue.
Thank you.
Becky,
Thank you. I was going to ask something. Another actually. So, is there a risk then, especially related to Action 15, which I had to remind myself what that was for other people, about it's about increasing the workforce in mental health, particularly in certain areas. And so, is there a risk that we can't recruit and don't spend money, and is that taken back or is it kept? And I think secondly as well, because when you link that with the savings plan, and I see that there were 2.2 full-time equivalent within the mental health team taking a saving, so it's because of long-term vacancies, so I was just a bit worried about that risk of not being able to recruit.
I think in terms of the posts that we've got currently out to recruitment, there was a degree of different planning when I came into post in January to look at what we actually needed for the service. So we're only going out now to recruit for amended posts. So for instance, we're going out for a care home liaison psychology post. We've recruited to a new care governance facilitator, but he didn't actually take up post until last month. So we've got like the first half of that salary. So I guess what I'm saying is, no, I don't think there is a risk. I think we will recruit to the new posts we've put out, and in fact, we've already made progress or agreed start dates for other posts within that money. And I don't know, Craig might correct me if I'm wrong, but the Action 15 money sits separate to our funded budget. So the risk of not recruiting to those posts and using them as savings would be very, very minimal, I would say.
Karen,
Thank you very much. I think this is a grave concern, Chair, if I might say so. And when we link this to some of the excellent reports that we've got coming later in the agenda, that from the Chief Social Worker, for example, and the one on market facilitation, and indeed the outcomes that we've just seen in the KPMG report, we realise the interlinkages between mental illness in Inverclyde and a lot of the other services, which are so absolutely instrumental in supporting people in our community. And so I think this is a concern, and it's reassuring to hear that the staffing will be all right. But I think it's if anything, we need to hang on to the services and see how that they interlink and make sure that they're sufficient to be able to cope with the amount of burden of mental health that we have in our patch. So I think it is a concern, and it's something that we'll want to be mindful of as we go through not only the excellent reports that we've got in front of us today, but as we move ahead over the next year. Thank you.
thank you, Karen. Anyone else? I think it's important to point out that, the census they done recently showed that Inverclyde mental health issues were rising in percentage terms. So I don't know if there's any recognition taken of that when this report was done. Or did you know that at the time? What's the news and get back to us,
So if I can come back then here, that Action 15 is money that's given to us for Scottish Government that goes in addition in the core budget. So part of the work that Katrina's been doing is to look at what is the demand versus around what do we want to do, and how do we look at that interface between what we've actually got within our core, what we've got additional coming in for Scottish Government, because there's always a challenge around non-recurring or monies that are not core, that come in year on year end, because we never know, we live in this place and we've lived in this place for a long time. Coming out of the pandemic, more money was put into it at the time that we had difficulties recruiting. So Katrina is trying to mitigate what that risk looks like. Part of it is to look at where we want to prioritise and what actually has the greatest impact, and actually what one of the work that Katrina's doing, and along which Secretary will testify, is to look at how do we mitigate that as a whole system, not work that sector, as well as within our services within the health and social care partnership, because mental health touches every single part of children's and families, criminal justice, adult services, homelessness. So this is about us going away. Now, I'm very clear, I don't want to see any money being lost out of the health and social care budget. I mean, we're already dealing with a £2 million shortfall, but the scale of what we're managing is much more manageable than some of my colleagues in the health and social care partnerships elsewhere. So I would want to say that trying to take redesigning 50 grand in a system as opposed to 689,000 in Glasgow is quite different. So I think that we would want to give you that reassurance at every stage we're having to look at this, and this is just where we are in Scotland at this moment in time.
Thank you, Kate. Katrina.
For yourself, Chair, and just to answer your concerns, and also maybe in response to Karen's, we are doing work within Inverclyde just now, as Kate said, to understand not only the demand in terms of numbers, but the demand in terms of what is the type of demand in terms of our services, because I think over the next 6 to 12 months, we've agreed with our teams to do almost a complete review of how we deliver those services, just to address, and that's not even from a financial perspective, I would have to say, although that's obviously in the background of every decision we take forward, but this is more in relation to making it easier for our service users and for the public to understand what we deliver and also to be able to access our services when they need it.
Thank you. David?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at the paper. 3.2, we're looking at mental health outcome framework and very for the infant mental health programme. I understand that those aren't directly done by us, but we basically take on the Glasgow service, if you will, the HSCP service. What I'm interested in know is how do we make sure that our people, our kids, are actually getting the maximum benefit out of this service? How do we influence to make sure that the service is being delivered to support our objectives?
Can I just hand you over to Jonathan Hines, the manager of Children's Services?
Thanks, Kate.
Thank you for yourself, Chair. BG, as you rightly pointed out, have a number of services that's in our direct area of responsibility. For services that are hosted by other partnerships and provided within Inverclyde, we still have an operational involvement, but also within management, senior management meetings and data reports, we're able to see footprint locally and also to feed up any particular changes in demand or risk that we need to take up to build back up.
Right, Jonathan, thank you, Chair. That gives me the assurance I was looking for.
Thank you. Yeah, just Kate was saying, because I go into the chair and vice chair's meetings with vice chairs and chair throughout Scotland, and our IJB is one of the better positions financially, and that's because decisions have been taken, but still being taken, obviously. So, and I hope it's a bit of reassurance too for Karen that we'll all be keeping our eyes for you, Karen. So, I hope you get some reassurance there. Thank you.
Sorry, may I just say one other thing, if I may? Thanks very much, Chair, and for those comments and for everybody's thoughtfulness here in this. But again, the last item that we're going to come to is on the homelessness report, and again, the ambitions from the IJB are just wonderful. And this is a fundamental service that supports the ambitions, of course. So all that we can do to help Katrina and all of the team just feels so important. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the Chief Sport Officer Annual Report. And Jonathan.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. And for you, I'm pleased to bring to this meeting the Integration Joint Board the Chief Social Work Officer Annual Report for 2023-24. And I do just want to check with colleagues that have some slides available. So I'll just give a brief summary of the content. This report has already been presented to the meeting of Inverclyde Council in September 2024 and has been approved for submission to the Office of the Chief Social Work Advisor to Scottish Government. Within the report itself, the content has been structured around a national template to provide information on governance and accountability arrangements for social work services, as well as outlining a range of statutory social work functions. The main section of the report will look at service delivery, performance information across children and families, adults and justice social work. And there's also consideration of the financial resources provided for the delivery of social work services and a summary of workforce matters, as well as considering some of the priorities and challenges ahead. A number of members will be aware already that the role of the Chief Social Work Officer is part of our governance arrangements in terms of professional practice and standards, as well as decision-making and delegated responsibilities locally. There are a number of slides that I'll just use as a summary, and the next slide summarises the purpose of the annual Chief Social Work Officer report, which is to provide that overview of services and their impact within our local communities, where the primary statutory duty of social work is to protect people from harm. The report includes some information on activity across all of the different areas of public protection, and they are child protection, adult protection, and the management of high-risk offenders, as well as prison and community-based justice social work services, and statutory measures to protect people, including our mental health officer activity and guardianship, etc. There is reference to the significant and changing national legislative and policy landscape that we operate within, and the report considers some of the impact of ongoing demand locally, as well as future challenges for local social work provision and national delivery. Set alongside the challenging financial landscape that social work services must be delivered within, the future shape of how services are provided, managed and supported remains critical to the protection of the public, whilst also striving to improve outcomes, promote independence, choice and aspirations for our citizens. Move on to the next slide. This outlines the basis of the report, and I'm, as ever, very grateful to Head of Service colleagues across the senior management team for providing a range of information on their areas of responsibility, where they have reflected key performance information, service quality, and the impact of services on outcomes for people. The main section of my report rightly focuses on the analysis of services from our integrated front doors through our advice and support to more formal protective processes and interventions to safeguard the well-being of our most vulnerable citizens. Following the submission of the Inverclyde report and those from the other partnership areas in Scotland, the Chief Social Work Officer Advisor to Scottish Government will compile a national review of key messages from all of these reports, and that will be published in the new year in due course. So moving on to look at some of those local key messages within the next slide. We know that in Inverclyde, our communities are a real strength. However, we also face a number of challenges, and the impact from the ongoing legacy of the pandemic, as well as the continuing grip of the cost of living crisis, and how it magnifies the impact of existing poverty, and that is continuing to be reflected in the needs of our local communities. Over the past year, teams have continued to work to meet sustained high demand for services, whilst also seeking to address capacity challenges and work within the financial envelope to deliver vital public services and plan for future needs. So the report therefore highlights the range of activity to mitigate those pressures, whilst working with our third and independent sector colleagues, and those relationships continue to be critical. I've also given particular focus to our workforce and the range of activity to support our existing teams and to develop a collective perspective on what good looks like in Inverclyde. And it's a fundamental part of the Chief Social Work Officer role to consider and address recruitment and retention challenges, as well as listening to colleagues to ensure that they are able to shape services in innovative ways. So despite no significant challenge, the report is a valuable opportunity to highlight key local achievements, and the next slide includes some reference to those. We know that earlier help and support is key to reducing demand on more formal social work interventions. So over the last year, our Children and Families Request for Assistance team, as the first point of contact, has undertaken 21% more initial assessments than the previous year. And through a partnership with Children First and other third sector partners, we've been able to increase the range of supports provided. And that includes our work with Home Start, Children First around maximising income and providing earlier help and family support, and also work to develop our whole family wellbeing early help hub pilot and partnership with council education services as well. Our child protection activity has largely stabilised coming through the pandemic, and we have seen marginally more child protection investigations than the previous year, but the main concerns around child protection continue to be parental mental health, parental drug use, and the impact of domestic abuse. We have, over the past year, however, developed a more robust multi-agency complex cases group, which meets quarterly and looks at those more complex cases to see where, in partnership, the plan for those children and families can be reviewed and augmented. Our adult support and protection referrals increased notably by 53% from the previous year, although fewer referrals required formal investigation. And of those that were investigated, most people were over 65 years old, and physical and psychological harm were the main areas of concern. Within Inverclyde, we also host the North Strathclyde Multi-Agency Public Protection Unit, which works across 6 local authorities and 3 police divisions. And we provide local training across a range of partners, including our housing partners. The last year also saw a number of areas of innovation, and board members here will already be familiar with the work to develop the Lens project within Children and Family Services, which gave the workforce the opportunity to bring some of their ideas to action, and we're in the process of implementing those as we speak. And the success of that and the impact that had positively with our workforce meant that we were able to look at rolling that out further within our adult services as well within more recent months. In terms of our workforce approaches, the HSCP's Learning and Development team continues to support the development of new social workers and social workers of the future through schemes such as Growing Our Own. And we recognise the value of that, particularly given the national challenge of recruitment and retention of social workers. So it's terrific to see that 5 social workers have been recruited from our recent recruitment campaign, but also that 9 paraprofessional staff last year across the HSCP have been supported to commence the formal social work qualification. We've also reimbursed the last year fees for a number of qualifying master's students, and these creative approaches have enabled a number of positive changes and have some real impact. However, we are aware, of course, that social work continues to face a number of complex challenges, and these are summarised in the next slide, particularly as members will be aware of the continuing high demand, which is significant, whilst the complexity of need has also continued. And that's alongside the ongoing financial pressures, of which we've already heard something today. We have those national capacity challenges within the workforce, and there's also been a marked increase in the volume of scrutiny, inspection and national review activity, and that can really be magnified in smaller areas. The IJB's 2-year budget within Inverclyde has identified significant savings challenges across all services, but it has provided a degree of stability for managers to plan services and work towards achieving those savings whilst protecting statutory services. In terms of the national landscape, we continue to see legislation change and develop, and more recent examples are around safe staffing, equal protection from assault legislation, and the Care and Justice Act. So that changes the nature of how all services are provided in integration, not just social work in isolation. So how the legislative landscape continues to change over the next year remains to be seen, and certainly since the report was written, there have been a number of developments, particularly around the proposed National Care Service and National Social Work Agency. But nevertheless, the next and last slide considers some of these points in terms of looking ahead. And we know that we will continue to focus on giving voice to the workforce to be able to develop change processes, such as through the LENS project. We know the financial landscape will be continued to be significantly challenging, but local honest recognition of that means that the workforce have an opportunity to help shape how services are provided in the future whilst protecting and shifting the balance of care. The governance arrangements around social work nationally and locally remain an essential element to meet those challenges, to be able to develop opportunities and to plan ahead. So the commitment of this IJB to support the role of the Chief Social Work Officer is welcome and critical to how we continue to develop operational services for the future. But nevertheless, the number of redesign programmes that members are aware of reflect both the financial restraints, but also the absolute commitment to compassion and kindness and doing things differently in Inverclyde to really have a positive impact on outcomes for our communities. In closing, I would just like to pay tribute to my colleagues across the HSCP who remain our greatest asset, and they will continue to impress and be fundamental to how we work with our key partners to make a real difference to our communities in the year ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. I think look at the report, you know, some very, I know, okay, but some of the figures are very depressing, you know, but we are looking at it, you know, we know where the problems exist and we're doing what we can to mitigate the worst of us. So well done to Jonathan and the team. And Francesca.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks to Jonathan for giving that report. As you said, Jonathan, the councillors have already had an opportunity to see this at council, and you've already listed, and I'm sure the board's well versed in all the challenges that we face locally, but I appreciate very much your recognition of Inverclyde's strong community spirit, but that on its own is never going to be enough. So I think it's just really to say that in spite of all the challenges, the cost of living, the pandemic, all the economic disadvantage that we face here, and the national picture we see across social work in terms of recruitment challenges and burnout, really what I just want to pass on is a thanks from myself as councillors and to echo the chair there for the workforce, for everything that they do to manage all these challenges and mitigate their impact, and to yourself for all the work that you do as well. I know that when I speak to some of the staff who've been involved in things like the LENS project or the Grow Your Own, the enthusiasm that they're feeling for those sort of innovative, really grassroots types of projects is so tangible. So just a thanks for everything that you do. Thank you.
David.
Thank you, Chair. I absolutely echo comments there. And what I go on to say is, when I read this report, there's a real clarity on the issues we face and the size and scale of them as well. But there's also a recognition there's a lot being achieved, and also that we're learning from the situation we're in. We're adopting an evidence-based approach. So when I looked at this, particularly looking ahead section as well, I thought about it in terms of our 4 strategic priorities, and we're very much building on evidence. We're able to get in early with intervention, and promoting the agency for customers, if you will, as well. I think those are all excellent. It's a really positive approach that's been taken, and it's clearly building on success. I don't underestimate how much of a challenge we've got, but it gives me great encouragement and great satisfaction seeing the fact that the whole team are looking to learn and looking to change and make it better, and that's certainly what comes out in this report. So it's very easy to read these reports because it's been quite dry, but this to me I came away feeling very positive about. And I'd just like to actually echo the comments in terms of that's not an achievement in terms of everything we face. That's good work well done. Long it continue.
Anyone else? No, right, Jonathan, thank you very much for that. Next thing on the agenda is the children and families placements. Jonathan again.
Thank you, Chair, and through the report before members today provides an overview of placements for children and young people who are required to be looked after away from home. And this paper has been brought given the overspend is a significant cost pressure for the HSCP, and it provides an analysis of how placements are sought, as well as oversight arrangements, and outlines current work to address the demand and inherent cost of placements as part of wider service redesign. There are times clearly whenever children need to become looked after either at home or away from home, and whilst that does not represent the majority of children and family social work activity, where the focus is very much about scaffolding and strengthening families, there will be times whenever children are required to be more formally looked after. But the majority of children continue to be looked after at home or with family members in kinship care arrangements. And that's where the HSCP provides a range of supports based on individual circumstances. But where a child requires to be looked after away from home, that will always be informed by a robust multi-agency assessment, and the report includes some further detail on how those plans are overseen by senior managers and subject to regular review to monitor progress, impact and activity. And whilst we don't make decisions from a financial perspective in care and protection of children, as senior managers, we also work with our finance colleagues to oversee the plans for children and to support budget management with an eye on working to reduce that overspend. There are a number of placements that are available, and within the report there's some illustrations of how the use of those placements has changed over time. We've seen a real commitment from our local foster carers over several years, and really importantly through the worst times of the pandemic, to provide loving and nurturing homes to children through that time. But we also have seen the number of local foster care placements reduce with the retirement of some of our foster carers, but also with the right to stay for a number of our young people who choose to stay in those households into adulthood. So that has reduced some of the local capacity and therefore can place greater demands on some of those more expensive external placements as well. So the report illustrates with a bit more analytical detail the different types of placements for children currently, but also how that has changed, particularly in terms of the increasing use of external foster care placements and also some of those residential placements where we've seen the increase in the budget pressures at paragraph 310 over that same 5-year period. Although some of those expenses will reflect particular bespoke placements, for instance, secure care placements, which are always provided out with the local area. It is interesting that whenever we looked at this beyond the confines of Inverclyde and compared with other areas, that the average weekly cost for a placement for children in Inverclyde is actually lower than a number of our comparator areas and aligns closely with the national picture. But nevertheless, over the past year, a number of actions have been taken forward as part of our redesign of children's services, and it's beginning to have some impact with initial data showing a reduction in the projected expenditure to year end of around £770,000, and regular meetings between managers and practitioners oversee those plans for children and young people to support them to return to Inverclyde where that's safe and appropriate to do so. The wider redesign of services also includes activity to increase the number of local fostering households, and the service has also invested in expanding our partnership with third sector organisations to focus more on earlier help and family support, with the aim of trying to reduce the need for children coming into care in the first place. And that really reflects one of the fundamental aims of redesign, to shift the balance of care towards more preventative approaches alongside intensive support to families and young people. Other areas include investing in our evidence-based programmes and interventions, such as signs of safety and healing, which has commenced, and also referring back to the LENS project, which I referenced in the previous item, the launch of the practice pack is providing more young people with opportunities to develop their skills and confidence to move from their established care placements towards independent living. So all of these elements actually impact on each other, but ultimately the increased demand for care placements reflects the significant vulnerability and need in our communities. But we feel by shifting the focus of the service towards that earlier help to support families and investing in evidence-based whole system programmes and intensive supports for young people, more children and young people will be supported to remain at home or within the local area over future years. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
I mean, I had to see the children's houses, you know, that they're allowed to stay. They're 21 now. I remember back to the paddle days when they get kicked out at 16 and you could see some of their faces. My heart broke, and I'm glad they extended it to 21. I'm glad now we've seen there's a problem there. And the home mother, the great, we visited it. What a fantastic facility it is now. That makes the transition from the children's house into their own tenancy. So sometimes it's just a wee thing you can tweet and it makes such a big difference. So thanks for that. Anybody else any questions? Oh, Karen?
Thank you very much. And this leads on from your point, really, Chair. So, first of all, Jonathan, thank you for your excellent social work report, Chief Social Worker report. And one of my questions comes from that. There are two questions, if I may. What are the outcomes? So, not necessarily for now, but I'm interested in the outcomes for our care leavers. What percentage are we managing to support care leavers into training or work, or how many of them are not in either? I think generally, if we can have more metrics on their outcomes, that would be really useful for us to try and make sure that we understand the care that they're getting. And it may be, because I'm so new, that this comes up in other places, you know, how many are being vaccinated, how many are having the proper developmental checks and so on. So during the care process, as well as the outcomes for care leavers. That's my first point. And my second point relates, Jonathan, back to your report, which is on young people seeking asylum in Inverclyde. And just if you could say a little bit more about how we support foster carers and others to look after them, because a lot of them will have been through traumatic times and they may not have good English. So what's involved for Inverclyde in supporting them well? Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Are you in a position to answer?
Very much. And I will endeavour to answer.
No, I thought education and did all them stats about.
Well, I suppose
the outcome, you know, the young people between 16 and 18, I'm sure they had maybe Francesca, education, some of them fashion.
I'll leave it to Jonathan in the first instance.
Right, you can come back in. Right, give you education, I'm going to use your skills. Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Chair. Through you, absolutely. I suppose in answer to your first question, Karen, around education outcomes for looked after children and young people, those are reported in a number of different ways, and as the Chair rightly points out, as a universal service, education services will report on those through their performance reporting, but also through the Children Looked After in Scotland class reports that are developed on a routine basis by each local authority area. There are opportunities to report on that where we have that information in terms of positive outcomes and positive destinations for looked after children and young people. I suppose in terms of the work that we are focused on within Inverclyde, positive destinations, as it's known for our young people, cover a range of different areas of work, and by developing our response to the promise as one of the national priorities and the national policies around what it means to grow up in Scotland, not just as a looked after child or young person. There's a lot of work ongoing locally through the work of our Promise Board, not just around the outcomes in childhood, but also the aspirations for our young people in Inverclyde moving into independent living. The second point in terms of young people seeking asylum, I suppose is a much broader question, and in terms of the Health and Social Care Partnership, the New to Scotland team lead on the work around young people who present seeking asylum in the local area. But where we have young people seeking asylum who are placed with foster carers, that's obviously a very specific matching process, and as part of that process, an assessment of the needs of the young person will be taken into account, and the ability and experience of the individual foster carers as well. And I suppose it also links with some of our recent improvement activity within our fostering services, where we're asking our foster carers, particularly because a number of them are very experienced foster carers, to help us to develop their learning and development priorities for the next 3 years. And I expect that that will certainly be reflected in terms of the shift in demand and the specific needs of children and young people in Inverclyde as well.
Okay.
Can I just add to this? I probably want, it might be helpful, Karen, if you look at the Chief Social Work Officer, page 76, and under supporting young people. So one of the most key issues about our care experience about achieving good outcomes is ensuring that they continue to be connected to social work and the wider statutory services, whether it's homelessness, education, etc. And actually, if I look back in my career, a long career, that I've seen that was always a challenge when young people left care that they didn't keep in contact. I think it is absolutely fantastic that within Inverclyde, out of 115 young people that are care experienced, 97 of those 115 young people still engaged with the service up to the age of 25. Now, for the outcomes will come depending on the trauma and that young person's experience, but the fact that they're still in touch with us as a service reassures me as the Chief Officer, so I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you, Kate. Right, Karen? That answer a question for you?
It does, and it was great just to hear that from Kate. I mean, I guess I'm just, I'm mindful of what Jonathan said about outcomes being reported in another part of the sort of governance framework. This is my second IJB. The first one, we had something similar when I asked a question. It was reported somewhere else. I think that was also reported to the Education Committee. It's quite tricky, isn't this, Chair, where I guess we're part of the governance oversight for some of the services, but how well we're doing comes in elsewhere. So perhaps you, Kate, and I might have a little bit of a think about that, because we don't want to ask officers to do any more work for us than they're doing already. We've got extensive and very well written papers to read, but it would be quite good if we could get a little bit more insight into some of the things that we're involved in, so that we can have a better understanding. I don't know what colleagues think about that, but I think that might be quite helpful. Thank you very much.
Jonathan.
Thank you, Chairman. I suppose to offer further assurance in terms of the different reporting processes that come to IGB, the strategic plan and the strategic plan priorities that David referenced earlier this afternoon are reported on regularly, and also our annual performance report. So I suppose one of the challenges with the Chief Social Work Officer report is that it's quite prescriptive in terms of the national template and a focus on those core statutory duties as well. So the broader ambition and the broader achievements of the IGB will be reflected in the regular reports to this forum through the strategic plan and the annual performance report.
Francesca.
Thanks very much, Chair. I suppose in terms of, I think you're absolutely right that I think at our Council's Education and Communities Committee, we have had sight of papers given a good amount of detail that I think would be reassuring about the educational attainment of care experienced young people in Inverclyde. And I suppose to say about that, in terms of that trauma, for example, trauma informed is at the heart, I think, of everything that's done there, and the people, you know, if they're of school age or even beyond, people would have been putting all those principles into practice. I think, I mean, I don't want to promise work for other people to do, but I think if those reports, I'd need to check and remember rightly, I think if that report had previously been in the public domain, there'd be no issue, of course, in terms of accessing it and possibly sharing it with members of the board or particular members who were interested. I think I remember just off the top of my head, certainly sometimes when it gets to the numbers we're talking about, they're quite small and there's a slight risk of identifying individuals in them from a data protection and a confidentiality point of view. But we can go back and check and see if those reports were ones that were public, and if so, there'd be absolutely no issue.
Okay.
So the class report is published. It's a national report and it looks at the comparators across the 32 local authorities around outcomes. So it might be a matter of sending that report, etc. So there is other supporting evidence that we draw through. I suppose the danger is that the amount of reports that we get in on a daily basis might grind the world to a stop, but we're happy to kind of take forward any. I think that to go back to the point I made, that the fact that we've still got young people that are engaged with social work, working through the outcomes, when I would have seen at least 15 years ago, you'd been lucky if there'd been 10 or 15% that would still be engaged with social work, and we're sitting at probably, I've not got 80 odds, I was like 80 odds, you know, I mean, around the percentages. That's fundamental. I appreciate that you would want more tangible outcomes that's reflected in our outcomes framework, and so it's about. The danger is that you can, I always say that you can torture data until you get the right outcome. So we just need to be clear about the data that we're providing, and I think it's better to be consistent with other places and how that's supported nationally. But that's just my view as the chief officer.
I mean, it's important that if any member of the committee feels as there's something missing in the report, they can contact you offline and send an email to Jonathan. I'm sure we'll be with the information you require. Okay. Nobody else? Right, thank you. Oh, David.
Sorry,
You're
Chair.
in front.
I'll wave my hands.
I know. Sing next time.
No, you do one year sing, even though you can't see my appalling voice. Just looking at thinking about the expenditure on residential care and foster care, and obviously the number of foster families which has significantly decreased, and as the report points out, that's necessarily meant we've had to spend more on residential care. I'm wondering, go back to Karen's point about outcomes, do we have a sense of the impact of going into residential care or receiving foster care? Is there a difference in outcomes, a perceptible difference, statistically valid, that we can speak to, or is it effectively it's a different way of providing the same service and the outcomes are the same as well? I don't have any sense of that.
Okay, and through the chair, I suppose it's always going to be very individualised depending on the experience of the child or young person and the provision of care either in an individual household or in a group setting. I think we're very fortunate within Inverclyde, thinking about our 3 children's houses, that we have got a very dedicated and nurturing environment in each of our children's houses. And again, as to pick up the chair's earlier comment about young people being able to remain, we've seen in the report references the average age of the young people in our children's houses is around 16. So as an average age, that shows a move upwards where young people are staying longer and towards adulthood, which is a positive indicator of how they are supported, how they're loved and how they're nurtured in residential. In foster care placements, either those foster carers registered within Inverclyde or with external providers. Again, we hear through children's reviews really positive feedback, and I think that the relationships that fostering team have with their foster carers reflects that, but also the feedback from young people as well. I suppose overall, where we are focused in terms of not just anecdotal, but some of the broader national research, that where children and young people are able to remain in the local area to maintain those connections with their schools, with their family and friends, that has the greater impact in terms of their incomes rather than whether they're in a foster care placement or a residential placement. So again, it goes back to an earlier point about the strength of community and Inverclyde being even more apparent in some of the soft outcomes for young people.
Absolutely helpful. Thanks, Jonathan. Thank you, Chair.
Right. And next on the agenda is the adult service integrated front door proposal. Alan Best.
Thank you, Chair. This proposal outlines the development of an integrated front door proposal within the Health and Social Care Partnership to streamline access to services, particularly recognisance to our ageing population. By implementing a phased model that emphasises timely, personalised care and coordinated services, the integrated front door aims to improve efficiency, reduce demand pressures and enhance, more importantly, service users' experience. The key components of an integrated front door system will include triage systems, self-management strategies and community connections, all aligned with the IGIB's obligations to address inequalities. The IGIB are aware that we've talked about integrated front doors with a view of potential efficiencies. This paper is more around the ethos and the importance of better outcomes for the service user in terms of why we're taking this approach. We can see that there's a year-on demand for services, and that is increasing, especially around people growing older with complexities across adult services. And we also recognise that the HSCP currently in adult services has multiple access points for services, which we recognise post-pandemic in some cases have become confused and perhaps difficult to navigate for service users. So we've started the piece of work in terms of looking about what do we need to do in terms of developing an integrated front door that's fit for purpose, is going to get best outcomes for individuals. And we recognise that some of the issues that some of our service users are currently seeing are potential fragmentation of services where individuals are struggling to navigate their way through to get to the right service, inconsistent information. We know there's an increased demand on services, sometimes a reduced unintentional continuity of care, inequalities to access of services and higher administrative requirements where we get duplication of services. What would the integrated front door ethos would be about for our service users or community to get to the at the right time to the right service, and to do that by developing a system that is more effective and is ensuring timely, accessible services suited to the specific needs of the individual, of which the key aspects will be timeliness, getting the service user to the service as quickly as possible to the right service, a personalised service that is tailored to the individual. Importantly, prevention and early intervention, services are integrated and coordinating their care across different sectors, ensuring comprehensive support, and importantly, empowerment of the encouraging self-management and informed decision-making for the individual by the individual as an active role within their care. And this is why we're adopting the right time, right service philosophy. Within this development, we're looking also in terms of where our financial advice services sit, and that's to enhance the opportunity to address economic barriers. We're also looking at the very, very, very key role that our partners play in this in terms of commission services, third sector and broader health and social care council services, where the whole system's working together on the benefit of the individual, and also looking at where digital technology can aid that process in terms of our information services and systems where somebody can access the service and be informed as they access service. So again, the paper outlines the rationale why we want to look at the integrated front door proposal, and it is a proposed draft timeline as we go through the next period of time, how we take this forward. At the moment, we're very much in a data collection mode, looking at our services and understanding our services, which are quite complex. And in some cases, we've actually created internal barriers ourselves with unintended consequences. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Alan. I mean, those that attended the health session, we see that the examples, the digital platforms were fantastic. I mean, I was a bit allergic myself, I have to say, because I got this presentation where I saw it at Social Conference a few years ago, and I was kind of arguing with the people presenting because I thought it would be any face-to-face interaction, and that's not the case, absolutely not the case. I mean, those severe cases that the example showed us, they still had someone for at least 4 hours every day, which were a long way to make me feel happy about that way forward. Plus the fact, one mother now is on the telecare, and she refused to go on it, but we said, "I'll leave you in the hospital unless you go on it." So she had to accept it, and she still got another 5 hours out. So I know the way forward, and I think it was the development session, the 3 examples was really, really good. So I hope it always something going in the future, no doubt about that. Becky.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is great, really support it, and certainly really recognise a lot of the challenges that you've highlighted when people are trying to access services, especially people with poor health literacy or digital loss. That's really, really welcome it. The work that's going to be done. Got one minor question in terms of the contacts 2023, the adult services. What's ICIL?
Oh, sorry, that's our Centre for Independent Living. Apologies, I should have put that in the full. That's our physical disability services or equipment store.
Okay.
It's a joint store between health and social care.
Okay, thank you. And then just the other thing, if it was about digital, and I know you're going to bring it back probably in April next year, discussion of options, and I'm a big fan of digital healthcare where we can use it, but I know we've talked about this before, but just obviously important that we recognise that not everybody is able to access and use digital services. But I think it's a really good way to divert those who can away from the face-to-face care, but just maintaining the face-to-face contact with others. So yeah, great, thank you.
Lynn Quinn, Councillor Quinn.
Yeah, thanks, Alan, for the report. There, really useful, I think. Yourselves as a trauma-informed council, I think it was one of our development sessions where I'd mentioned someone with trauma in their past having to repeat their story a number of times when trying to access services. So I think this is a great idea when someone really just has to tell that story once and then they'll get the appropriate support. So I'm looking forward to seeing the details and how it unfolds, but just from a trauma-informed council, I think it's going to really assist with that as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Lynn. No, I don't see anybody else. Is that legacy handling?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, thank you. That's fine, thank you. Item 10 again, so it's a progress of the primary care improvement plan.
Thank you, Chair. IGIB members will remember at our last IGB we had a report from the NHS Glasgow and Clyde perspective on the primary care improvement plan. This report very much gives a feel to the IGIB on the progress of how we're delivering the primary care improvement plan locally and how that contributes to the overall progression of the transformation of primary care services. It's quite a lengthy report, so I won't go into it in any great depth, but the main theme of the report is certainly is how we have successfully introduced a range of multidisciplinary professionals within primary care. This has both directly and indirectly diverted workload away from GP practices and moved that to the most appropriate professional or service. This is very much in line with being able to develop to allow GPs to work in their expert medical generalist role and more often making sure that the service user is getting to the right service at the right time and the appropriate service. The main sort of highlights from the report is in the successes for locally within the primary care improvement plan. One of the strongest ones certainly has been the population engagement, and that continues to be a key deliverable in terms of primary care transformation, in terms of raising awareness to alternative services and more appropriate the right service and directing service users to the correct professional rather than the GP practice. You'll have seen probably there's been a lot of engagement in that, both within social media, electronic billboards, working alongside Your Voice and having many sessions with community groups and key stakeholders in terms of working through how to access services at the correct time. and the correct service. We've also been engaging with our own workforce to raise the awareness about the multidisciplinary work that we're undertaking within primary care, again with an ethos about making sure the service user is going to, and be supported by the correct service. We've spoken on many IGIBs in terms of the large piece of work in terms of vaccinations to our local community and moving that workload shift away from the traditional shift from the GP practice to our own vaccination team. We've worked very hard in our local community using an ethos of bringing the vaccinations to the community, especially around the availability of more local vaccination sites, and also working with partners in Scottish Ambulance Service and others in terms of mobile vaccination units that can get to parts of the community that are a wee bit more geographically harder to reach. And our own housebound team are also working for anybody who's unable to be able to go out to one of the vaccination clinics, that we can actually vaccinate them in their own home. Our community link workers have been a great success in terms of supporting individuals who traditionally went to GP practices for non-medical issues, and that has been a great success about linking service users with the more appropriate service, including partners within the third sector. We continue to develop our nurse practitioner colleagues as an alternative to people seeking a GP, where the ANP, the advanced nurse practitioner, is the more appropriate person, especially in some of our home visits, and that's a model we continue to grow locally and develop locally, although it does, as the paper says, it does come with some challenges. Our community treatment and care services have been enhanced and are expanding our community nursing care, and in terms of medical support as well, and that has been a success as well. We also are starting to develop our advanced nurse physiotherapists, AHPs. And that's a model that, again, has been supporting GP practices and supporting individuals to see more appropriately a physiotherapist rather than a GP. And finally, we continue to build on our skill mix within our multidisciplinary team, which adds a real flavour and balance to our models of care, enable clinicians to focus on complex care whilst supporting our community. Happy to take any questions.
Before you do that, we have a clinical director, Hector MacDonald. Hector, you want to add any comments to the report?
Sorry, Chair. No, I think Alan's covered it. I'm certainly happy to come in with the answers to any questions, however.
Thank you. Francesca, you have a question?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, thanks for that report, Alan. I think I was interested in the vaccination programme, as you said, like all the papers here, that's really important. And you've mentioned that you're looking at kind of different models and being a bit more agile and flexible about how that's delivered. I think just in terms of listening to feedback from the population, and you mentioned that it's looking at geographically hard to reach parts of the area. What about the metaphorically hard to reach? Do you feel confident that if there was a kind of case for sending that mobile vaccination unit somewhere for our friends, we weren't getting enough people coming along for vaccines, that would be able to be quite responsive to that? Or would it be looking at a bit further down the line if we needed to make that change?
Through yourself, Chair. Yeah, we're continually seeking feedback from our community about the successes of some of our vaccination areas. And we did recognise in the past some of the areas weren't as what we thought would be a better option, weren't the better option. That's why we've been looking more around some of the community hubs. But certainly where we're getting feedback that folk are seeking a bit of difficulty getting to a vaccination area, that's where we've been focusing the vaccination bus. So it's very much we're managing about where that will go. You know, it's not the Glasgow and Clyde Health Board that dictate that. We feedback say that perhaps this is an area that we feel that would be beneficial, and certainly working with our colleagues in the council about some of the access availability of where you can actually place a bus. So we've been quite creative about that, but yes, we'll continually seek feedback from our population if there's a struggle.
Thanks, thank you.
I'm going to Councillor Sandra Reynolds first on that. Sandra.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I've just got a couple of comments. One again about the vaccination. I had quite a lot of feedback from local residents about their inability to get to Broomhill. So it's really good to see that there'll be drop-in mobile units over the area, which should help that. How is this going to, how are the population going to know about these? I know they'll be kind of widely advertised on Facebook and things like that, but quite often people miss these things. If we get, I'm sure you've got a plan for that. I'm just wondering what that plan is.
Well, thank you for that question. It's a good point. That's why, as well as our social media and other communications, we work very closely with our Your Voice and other carers groups. So certainly is not only taking feedback, but also to help publicise when we're going to focus on a vaccination in this particular area. So very much using those sort of community connectors type links to make sure we're getting that out, the message out to our community as much as we possibly can do.
Thanks. I've got a second point, if that's okay.
Yeah, there you go.
I know this is a primary care improvement plan, but I do have a question. Having worked as part of the primary and pharmacotherapy for a number of years in GP practices as a practice pharmacist, then and now retired from that and working ad hoc in the community a bit more. And obviously community pharmacy is maybe not part of this plan, but you did mention about people being signposted to the most appropriate thing, and there's not really a mention of the huge amount of services that community pharmacy has in this. Are we mentioning it elsewhere, this being a primary care improvement plan, that we still have, you know, lots and lots of signposting that needs to go to pharmacy as well? Is there room for that there?
Yeah, through yourself, Chair. Yeah, no, it's a very good point. Yes, we do work very closely with our colleagues, pharmacy colleagues in the independent sector. And yes, we do, as part of our kind of right service, right time, we will highlight all the services that local pharmacies can provide. And we also have a forum that we have with our local independent pharmacies, which Dr MacDonald and the team will meet with colleagues within the independent pharmacy, but we do publicise with the general public where it's the right time to go to the pharmacist rather than go to another service.
Yeah, I'm well aware of the public, you know, what's there, and you constantly see that in the media and social media, etc., about the right place at the right time. I'm just wondering, I know this report is about primary care, but you did mention signposting to services like physiotherapy, etc., to take away from GP, and community pharmacy does take quite a lot away from the GP as well. I mean, I know that myself, doing some locums, and I see patients when I'm doing a locum regularly throughout the day that might otherwise have gone to their GP. So I'm aware of how valuable that is. I'm just wondering, you know, there's no mention of that in here. Is there a space for that, to highlight it?
Okay, I can certainly, through yourself, Chair, we can bring back at a future report some of the activities, or link in with yourself, Councillor Reynolds. I can get the team to give some of the activity that we've done, have done and currently do with the pharmacists. Yeah, I could do that for you.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Dr MacDonald, take it.
Hi, just if I could take a couple of those points from Sandra there. The report looks really at the activity really within the primary care improvement plan, which is the sort of GP contract-based programme that's funded through that, through that funding stream. So the pharmacy first element and the community pharmacy element doesn't come directly from that funding stream, so that's why it's not mentioned as one of our work streams there. Although, as Alan said, the pieces of work around population engagement and choosing the right service, they all do mention community pharmacy and the importance of community pharmacy, and how, as you said, Sandra, acknowledging that they do take a considerable amount of work, off general practice. But it's just not mentioned in this report because it's not one of our sort of work streams. Similar, just going back to your initial point about the awareness, Alan, I think, covered that perfectly, but it was just really to say that, and I know that not all the population will use the online booking system, but that the online booking system will give people a choice of where they can choose their vaccine as well. So that's an additional point of access to to be able to choose a different location than and to make people aware of the different locations that are available.
Thank you. Paul Ryan, and then we'll have Karen and then David to let you finish.
Thanks for the point. I suppose it's in the clear interest of the retired GP, but I get saw some of the IGP. You can say you're doing a lot more better than the IGP covering the areas. Question is though, the other IGP has been mentioned, constrained very much by funds. You talk about different areas, you say your physiotherapists, you're only covering 62% of the population. Is it feasible to roll out completely, or do you just have to concentrate on your three main core areas?
Sorry, could you just repeat that? I'm partially deaf, so.
You talk about you're constrained by funds, obviously, and you say for the physiotherapists you're reaching 62% of the attractive population. How realistic is it to extend it out to the whole population, or are you constrained by money?
Yeah, I think that's a bit of a challenge at the moment, and I'll probably perhaps bring Hector in on this one. I don't know that we would like to do more with our sort of physiotherapy colleagues, but at the moment, obviously, we've tried to maximise the funding that we have just now, stretch as far as it can, but we recognise that's one of the bits that we need to build on in the future if the opportunity arises. But I don't know if Hector would want to come in on that one.
Yep. So I think, Paul, you've summed it up. I mean, I think, you know, it became apparent that the funding wasn't going to allow us to roll that out in the same format as it is currently. I think we're constantly in discussion with our physio colleagues to see, as Alan mentioned earlier, about potential for skill mix changes to maybe allow a slightly different model. I know in some of the Glasgow areas they have piloted sharing physios between practices using sort of one appointment system and one consulting room sharing between practices. But I think after piloting that, it was felt there were issues there that made it less efficient. And the system does work better when the clinicians are embedded within the actual GP surgery as if they're a clinician there. So I think it is desirable, but obviously the MOU2, the Memorandum of Understanding, you know, put other areas as priorities like pharmacotherapy. So we are keen, and we are continually looking at ways that we might be able to roll this out further. But at present, unfortunately, we are not in that position.
I know everybody's keen to make a point here, but Kate wants to say something.
Yeah, I've been trying to get in with some of the points, you know what I mean, some of the points. So I'd first like to go back to Councillor Brennan. I think we've got more work to do around doing the deep dive around the inequalities, and for some of our communities that might not engage as well around the immunisation programme, because we know that at times that people are more likely to go for these things when they are engaged in universal health services and not being engaged. So that is some of the areas that we're looking at, and that's part of what we're trying to look through our strategic priorities and a strategic plan. And just to pick up the point that Councillor Reynolds brought in, I do think we should bring a separate report for not under this item, but about for the pharmacist, and for the point of just to give people an understanding around what that signposting looks like in Inverclyde, because in each of the health and social care partnerships, some of the initiatives are quite different. They're not always the same. And actually, I think Councillor Reynolds' point is really good about how we can keep people away and provide them with that access to support here. But I just thought I'd come back in and address some of these issues. And just to remind that the strategic plan is more of a targeted plan in Inverclyde around trying to rebalance some of the inequalities that we have. So as we move forward and make our priorities about service delivery, we need to be mindful about the impact of inequality. So it's to pick up your point, Paul, that actually, you know, if we can't provide to 100%, who are the people that we really want to target? And that's part of the debate that needs to happen through our own how we deliver with our GP colleagues too.
For colleagues in the chambers here, I'm going to ask you about patients. I'm going to bring Karen Turner in, then David, and then Dr. Metcalf. Okay, Karen.
Thank you very much. I just wondered if our GP colleagues were here, how would they be reacting to the progress that's laid out so helpfully from Alan in our paper?
Do you hear that? Hector?
Do you want me to answer that?
Yes, please.
I like your
suppose,
smile, Hector.
yes, well, I suppose, Karen, I am a HSCP clinical director, but like Paul, I am a practicing GP. So, yeah, so I'll try and answer this with my GP hat on. I think GPs are pragmatic. I think the feedback from GPs has generally been very positive around most of the services. Particularly GPs do react badly when they're told that a service may not, for example, the physiotherapy that Paul mentioned. I think those practices that don't have it are very jealous that they don't have it, and those that do are very reluctant to reduce their service. It has been very important for them. I think throughout Scotland there has been an issue with the inability to reach where we'd want to be in terms of full delivery of the memorandum of understanding. But generally speaking, I think if it was a report card, I would say they would say doing okay but could do better. I think is the answer. There is positivity there, but I think with the workload and demand in primary care post pandemic, I think that certainly I think they would like to see more.
That's really helpful. So I guess your message to us is support colleagues to keep on it, to get to the income that we can to make all the services work for everybody, and don't lose sight of it. And then alongside that, the discussion that we've just had on making sure that our services, when they're not in GP practices particularly, are easy for people to reach, so that GPs are confident that their populations are getting vaccinated, getting access to the things that they need to, that they're not providing themselves. But there's that reassurance that comes together. So all the bits that we're getting, we need to bring them together in our heads and make sure that they come under the general practice, although they might not be based there. That's very helpful. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Karen. David? Lawyer, patience, everything.
No, not at all. Not at all, Chair. No, thank you very much for this really good open discussion. Linked to the primary care improvement plan, just a point that Karen made, and I think one of our colleagues made as well, just thinking in terms of community pharmacy. I'm conscious that in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, the National Pharmacy Association have voted from January to reduce opening hours, to do a restriction of services as well because of funding challenges. I'm wondering, this may not be a question for right now, but how are we cited that in terms of the emerging risk that we will be finding ourselves in the same position here in Inverclyde with limiting community pharmacies? I'm conscious that funding is an issue, and additional services like the boxes, home deliveries are key to an awful lot of communities. So I'm just wondering, are we citing that as the emerging risk going forward, but not necessarily for this meeting?
Kate?
If I can come in, we can pick that up in the separate report around what the offer looks like in Inverclyde, around how do we use and capitalise on our colleagues that are community pharmacists and pick up any emerging risks.
Thanks, Kate.
Right, Becky?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think it's a great report, and thank you. There's been a lot of work been done in there, and I think it's picked up in the advanced nurse practitioner role as well. So it's another really key role, like the pharmacists that do an awful lot of work. Particularly, well, it's a shame one GP practice isn't covered. I don't know how they feel. It's not Hector's, but I particularly wanted to know about the 50% who are still in training, because I think you've articulated really well there that can't be assumed that they're working the same as a trained ANP. And two things: when will that 50% of the workforce be trained, and is there a risk that I see your point of the local decision to then going forward only employ fully qualified MPs, which I think sounds reasonable, but is there a risk that might not be possible? Learning from other HSCPs, are people coming in and going for these jobs at fully trained level, or are they mostly coming in to be trained?
Yeah. Thank you for that question for yourself, Chair. It's a an emerging picture. There's a small ANP workforce, and I suppose with any change in a new service, a new career path, we're at the stage just now where the numbers are small, so we're at the sort of development stage, so not just in Inverclyde, but across nationally. You probably find that most ANPs are at some point in their training phase. We're hoping that the colleagues that are currently in training just now, we'll see them hopefully qualify in 2025, but we've got a commitment there to see them through their training, support them, and they're very well supported from the board side as well. But we do recognise that finding that balance for training, but also having clinical colleagues hitting the ground running, so to speak, that's why we're now looking at also employing a qualified ANP as put the role out to attract somebody who's already qualified. So that should allow us to maintain our capacity, our workforce and our skill base, people in training, attract colleagues in the nursing profession into as a developmental path and career path to promote people to come into that, but also to maintain services by hopefully pulling in people who are already qualified ANPs. I don't know, Laura, if you've got, as a chief nurse, if you'd have got a comment on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Alan. So the issue of training ANPs and not necessarily staying once you've trained them is a big issue for the board. Where we've been lucky in Inverclyde is if we've lost them from the HSCP, we've kept them within Inverclyde, so they've maybe gone to work with our primary care colleagues in GP practice, whatever, but we have kept them within our system, and we've got to take that as a bit of a positive. We have attracted fully qualified ANPs, so I'm confident that we can get some, but it's a really mobile workforce. There are more jobs out there than there are ANPs, so they're absolutely able to cherry pick. But we're constantly working to make sure that our nursing services in Inverclyde are seen as really attractive, and that we do get people, and we've got a lot of support in to our staff to try and keep encouraging them. So yeah, we'd be hopeful that we would manage to get some in, but it's really hard for staff when you're keeping training, and then they leave. But say we have managed to keep some locally, so we've got to take that as a positive.
Okay.
Thanks, Becky. It's a really good point. And Alan and I were having a conversation about that the other day there. And I think we have to look at what it actually means as we move forward, and particularly because we've got a workforce that you can't necessarily secure. And as Laura's right, we do go into our GP services. Fundamentally, it's a big investment for the HSCP and the RGB to put people through training that we're not seeing the impact. So we are keen to have a wider discussion about what that looks like as a whole system, and not just around primary care improvement, because we've got that challenge across the board. So stop it.
Thank you, colleagues. Agenda item number 11 is Chief Financial Officer Savings Update. Craig.
Thank you very much for yourself, Chair. This is an update report basically on the savings programme that we've got for this financial year and the next. This carries on from the development session you had a few weeks ago, where we gave a wee bit of an update there. This is just giving a further update of where we are with it. Obviously, we went into a lot of detail there, but my plan is just to cherry pick some of the areas that we've been dealing with recently and where we are overall. As you know, we agreed a just under £5.4 million savings programme for the next 2 years, and obviously we're pleased to say that we've done quite a lot of work in the background in the last number of months, and we're now showing that for this financial year, of the 2.6 million, we've achieved just over 2.3 of that, and for next year we've achieved just over $500,000 of that. So just highlighting some of the work that we've done. As you know, when we spoke about it last time, we have set up individual savings subgroups which highlight a number of the particular work streams that we've got here, and that's been working well. Just to give some examples of what we've been doing, we've set up a commissioning and review group which has been looking at our contracts we've got and just trying to target what we provide, etc., about where we're looking for particular savings. That's been good so far. We've achieved just over £168,000 worth of that, we continue to work through with our providers at the moment, and we'll bring a more in-depth update on that in the next couple of months again, once those particular discussions come to a conclusion. We've looked at a review of our long-term vacancies again, and that's something that we're going to continue doing. At this moment in time, we've actually overachieved against that, but we will continue to look at that there. And these are all vacancies that we've had where we don't feel this will have an impact on services as such and have been vacant for a while. So again, that's helped us in that area. We're looking at a review of adult self-directed supports and supported living services. And on the day, as you saw, one of our providers came in to give us a presentation of where we plan to go with that. The review group continues to work on that side of things, and already to date we've identified £310,000 worth of savings in that area. We've obviously appreciate that the vast majority of the savings for this year, what we would say probably the more straightforward ones, and the more difficult ones are in year two. But this is one of them. So that's where we're working on that at the moment. Also covering a few other areas. We spoke about integrated front doors, which there was an earlier report on today, giving a bit more detail on that side of things. Another area is a business support review, where we worked on that, and in terms of having vacancies to date, we've already achieved £262,000 worth of that savings. Taking that forward, the review group in that particular area is going to be looking at the 3 work streams that we've mentioned there: structure and service delivery, our workforce, and our new ways of working, in order to take that forward and give a business support review and our business support function a good way forward for that. We are also going to be looking at some of the other areas there, for example, nursing care home beds, homemakers, education and placement support. And one of the areas we have had a lot of success in is appeal management, in terms of vacancies again, where we have already achieved £600,000 in that area. As part and integrating a number of these particular savings, we're in the process of doing a voluntary redundancy and voluntary early retirement for all of our staff on a number of these targeted areas. We're still at the moment, we're waiting on figures come back from the Strathclyde Pension Fund. Once we have that, that will allow us to then take that forward in terms of potential releases within the staff. So we're not quite there at that, and we're still waiting on that. So that's a work in progress. Just felt it was good at this moment in time to bring this report to the IGIB, just to give a flavour of where we are with the saving progress overall. And as always, happy to take any questions anyone might have.
David.
Thank you, Craig, thank you very much for this report. It's really good to see the progress we're making. I think to have only £250,000 to be achieved between now and the 31st of March, when we've got a target of 2.6 million, is no small achievement. So for everyone who's involved in that, I think we should record our thanks. Just that specific question in terms of integrated front doors, perhaps for yourself or Alan, also spoke about how come March 2026 is when you expect to have the full rollout of integrated front door approach. I'm just wondering, in terms of that 380 savings, is that predominantly VR we're looking at the moment? Because I wouldn't expect us to be making savings before we've actually rolled out. Otherwise, March 2026 will be very busy.
I can come in first of all, one of you might want to come in more on the actual operational side. In terms of the money, yes, that's right. We're already got vacancies in the system there, and that is one of the targeted areas as part of the VR exercise. So we hope to know more about that in the next number of weeks.
Thank you.
Yeah, just as Craig said there, the VR exercise will be crucial and certainly getting building up quite the momentum and where we're going with that. But we said earlier in the other report, we are looking at where efficiencies can be gained by duplication of services, using technology as well, and that will allow us to be, I think, have a greater view over how we take forward integrated front doors and the opportunities. As I said earlier, the best outcome for the service users is the primary point of view, but there will be efficiencies that will come from that in terms of reducing duplication.
Thanks, Alan. Thank you.
Karen. I got like a shot. Everybody, no? Afternoon report. And then number 12 is Inverclyde CHC Market Facilitation Commission Plan Update Craig.
Thank you. Happy to take this one again through yourself here. This is our updated market facilitation and commissioning plan update for the next 3 years. As is the case, every time we set a new strategic plan, what happens then is the commissioning plan also follows that, and as is the case. This particular report, what it does is it shows that plan for the next 3 years, and it's a continuation of the plan that we've had before, but an update as to where we are now. So what this basically does is it highlights the main thing in this particular report is under Appendix 2, which shows the main changes in the report compared to the previous one. And the main changes are, you can see from there, predominantly around moving from the 6 big actions now to the 4 priorities and how that impacts upon our commissioning plan. This is effectively our Bible for commissioning for the next 3 years which we're working on. It highlights the increase in contracts that we've had, and from what you can see in the report, it moves from 55 million up to 51 million. So it shows you the impact and size of how that particular area and service that we're working on has grown in the last 3 years. It also, the appendices in there show you each of the individual areas that we're looking at and based on the service within the HSCP. And this again, it shows you the particular estimated contract values we have in all these areas. This report, obviously, there's a lot to it, but as I said, it's a good document which we use on because obviously the contracts we have change year to year. But as always is the case, we're happy to take any questions anyone might have on this.
Any questions? Great. No, no. The Inverclyde Joint Board dash approved updated draft authorization new market facilitation. Noting plan 2024-2027, note that the changes made from the previous plan highlighted the appendix 2. Agreed. Okay, thank you. And next one is the Chief Officer. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. So just for a point of clarification, that the Chief Officer's report brings to the IGB matters that don't require a full report or an update from other matters that we've previously done. So it's quite a full report this time. So I'll just take you through some of the key highlights. Working in fairness, people will have the opportunity to read it. And you can see that we continue to make good progress around delayed discharges and some of the developments that we've done around our new approaches, particularly as winter is, well, you can just look at your car this morning to realise that winter is now and truly come. And we actually think that we're probably in a good place to manage and provide the challenges of which is probably going to be quite a challenging winter across the board. The next one is about our unscheduled care, first care line and delivery plan. So that's just an update around where we are with that, and it kind of reflects it's interrelated to our delayed discharges. So it's got a kind of correlation to that. And just to say that we've undertaken, Katrina brought a paper around mental health engagement sessions, and that went really, really well, and we had quite good engagement. I think we had a lot of learning around what people prepared to do, and we thought that everyone would want to do face-to-face, but part of the learning is, digital is definitely preferred around our engagement strategies. And the next point is Inverclyde Recovery Month. This is the amount of work that was done to support the recovery month by the HSCP services in totality with our colleagues in the third sector. So it's quite phenomenal around the level of activity and partnership and relational work. And we brought up a bit more about Mind of My Own, and Cam, just to pick up your point about outcomes. This is a digital engagement platform that actually allows outcomes to be extracted from a young person's point of view and actually can be used with our care experience too to deliver in what is really important to her today. And you can see that we were considered the most improved organisation around how we were actually delivering Mind of Our Own. And actually having that lived experience and voice is so important for how we take forward some of the transformation of our services moving forward. And that is a really good platform for Jonathan as a chief controller and the head of children's services to take forward. And we decided that we would put a lot more detail around our smart card innovation, bearing in mind that we know this is a public document and we see it as an opportunity to get out there in the wider sense about the impact of our smart card innovation. And the IGP had the opportunity to see that a couple of weeks ago in action, and hopefully that they were quite reassured and impressed about the fact that it's very person-centred and that aligns to our strategic objectives in terms of getting and supporting people at the right time. And some of our ambitions around our earlier paper, our integrated front door, and that we can do things differently and actually and support people in a different way. So I'm not going to say any more than that, and if you want to ask me any questions, the heads of service no doubt will be happy to kind of provide you with some details.
It was about the delayed discharge. One of the savings plans that was made was that we would reduce the number of care home beds that we were paying for, and this was based partly on the fact that we had booked extra care home beds for winter pressures last year and then not used them. But this one's advising that we move people into local care homes as a sort of transitory step, which seems counterproductive to what you've just previously done.
We use care home beds as part of the rehabilitation process. So older people are not being in deep conditions in hospital. And I don't need to rehearse that because everyone knows around the table about the impact of that. What we've seen as being successful is the redesign of our social care services, and we have been able to build our capacity. So before we did the redesign, we had 76 vacancies for our social care workers. I think today we have 3. And this is a thanks about how we were trying to focus on what really matters to our community. And our community tells us consistently they want to stay at home in their own home. So our investment will be on community-based services. That's reflected in our strategic plan, and that's the emphasis, and it's reflected right through to Katrina's world, to Maxine's world, and to Jonathan's world to ensure people stay in our community. So it is a consistent theme. So we believe we are comfortable within taking that efficiency out of the savings based on what we have done, our own data analysis and trajectories.
Any other questions for the officer? No. Item 14 is just the joint board audit committee minutes of the 2000.
I don't need to keep this in any detail, Chair. This is as far as I'm concerned, natural representation of the meeting which we had on the 14th of June. I think it's fairly self-explanatory in terms of what's in the paper. We would quite a week ago that Alan Cowan has since left us. He was chair. We thanked him for all his hard work over the years. He's an excellent chair. And then as councilman guidance, very much appreciated by officers in the secretary or vice chair. And just to record that here, that's okay.
I did form one at Santiago Compostela. If we finished it, just about, you done well. It was fantastic. You done it, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Hey, Item 15, which is going to private session, so we're moving to the appropriate resolution. We're getting a private session, and members of the public are asked to leave at this stage. Okay.